a while back, actually just last year, I came out with a book called The Methuselah Factor. Just looked a little bit earlier today. It's doing well as one of the preventive medicine titles on Amazon. It's number 20 among the Kindle preventive medicine titles. It's also available in softcover and audiobook. And it's tracking really well. People like the book. It's making a difference. And tonight and in subsequent health segments, we're going to go through practical things from this book. We've come out with a series of new videos that I'll be showing you, and we'll start doing that this evening. So we're going to move to a poll at this point, and we're going to see if this works. Is this poll opening up for you? So do you have a poll showing on your screens? So we've got it's a 2-question poll. Have you read all or part of my book, The Methuselah Factor? And then have you seen any of my missing link videos? So I see a number of you responding. So so just simple yes or no questions. We'll give you about 30 seconds more to answer those 2 simple questions. Just give us an idea of who is with us tonight. So about 15 more seconds. I see about 8 of you. I don't know who's who. It's anonymous, at least to me at this point. And okay, good. Thank you. We're going to close it here in about 10 seconds, and then I'll show you the responses. So we're just closing the poll here. Okay, so we're going to end the polling. Okay, we're going to share the results with you. So just so you know, if you said you've read some or part of the Methuselah Factor book, you're like half the participants. If you haven't, you're like the other half. And it seems that most of you have not seen any of our missing link videos. Now, I'm sorry for those of you watching on Facebook or YouTube. Only if you're on Zoom can you actually interact and do some of the interactive functions. But we appreciate those of you who are on Zoom giving us some feedback. So we are going to go back to the video at this point. And Victor, Victor, my son, is here. I'll introduce you to him. Victor, you might as well unmute yourself and say hello to everyone.
Hello.
Okay, man of careful and well-studied words. So, Victor, are you able to see the waiting room?
I am, yes.
Okay, so you can let people in. Have you tried that?
I have been, yes.
Okay, good. Thank you for doing that. Okay, and we're all seeing the screen at this point, still showing the poll, just the questions. Okay, so we're going to move on and talk about why hemorrheology, why blood fluidity is so important, and I'll tell you about some things that you can do to connect with this material between now and our next session that will take place on Tuesday the 9th. So medical research has shown all kinds of connections between this Methuselah factor. It's my term for hemorrheology. I call it the Methuselah factor because there was a character in history who was reputedly the longest lived person on the planet, and that individual was named Methuselah. So if you don't have sound coming through, everyone else does, so check your speakers. And Victor, if you check the chat, keep an eye out for that and interact with people, that would be helpful. So I want to show you a few things that the medical science is showing about this important science of blood fluidity. Let me just give you the example of stroke. So stroke is, of course, a leading cause of death, and it's something that has been connected with blood fluidity. That may not seem surprising, but in this 2004 study, they looked at a number of markers of blood fluidity. Hematocrit, that's the percentage of your blood that's made up of red blood cells. They looked at viscosity, that's a measure of blood thickness. And then the tendency of your red blood cells to clump, as well as a clotting protein called fibrinogen. All of these things are determinants of blood fluidity. The worse they were, the more strokes a person had, or the more likely they were to have a stroke. You say, okay, well, that's pretty obvious. How important are these risk factors? Well, let me illustrate this for you with coronary artery disease, the cause of heart attacks. And this is looking at some of these same Methuselah factor components, these same determinants of blood fluidity. But I want you to notice with things like fibrinogen, this clotting protein, or viscosity, it can increase your risk of a heart attack some 4-fold. So this Methuselah factor that we're going to study, we're going to show you how you can improve your blood fluidity. It's going to be very practical. Tonight, I'm just giving you a little bit of background. And what we're going to do to make this even more practical is tell you this, and that is that these factors are not only important for things like preventing stroke and heart attack, but they can help your mental and physical performance. This is another graphic from my book, The Methuselah Factor, and it's showing you in athletes, highly trained athletes, how if they improve their blood fluidity, they had more muscle strength, they had better working capacity, better fitness measurements. And so really, if you want to perform better physically and mentally, you want to optimize your Methuselah factor. So it can do all these things. You see them listed there. We will be, we are recording these presentations, and we'll put it up there for you after the program. We'll send it, if we have your email, we'll send this out to you. So make sure you let us know how we can connect with you, okay? So let me go ahead now and tell you, we're going to let you have an assignment between now and our first official start. This is an introductory meeting where I was giving people an overview. We're glad that you've come. 2 weeks from tonight, we'll actually be launching the program where we'll give you a pointer or several pointers every week to improve your blood fluidity, improve your overall health. And we've got an assignment. Victor's going to put this link in the chat section of Zoom. If you're not watching on Zoom, probably the easiest thing is just to go to Compass Health Consulting, Compass Health Space Consulting on YouTube. And we're going to be showing you some videos over the course of this series. And tonight we're going to do that. We're going to show you one of these missing link videos. It's based on one of the emerging connections between COVID-19 and blood fluidity. If you haven't heard the name of Dr. Schwelt, he's one of the leading YouTubers, physician who's actually treating COVID-19. And he's talking right now, I just looked at his most recent YouTube video, talking about how really the Methuselah factor, he didn't use that term, but blood fluidity and clotting is responsible for some of the complications of COVID-19. So if you want to have less severe COVID-19 infection, you want to have good blood fluidity. We're going to right now show you a video, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and one of my associates is going to actually show you this video right now. So it's one of the series called The Missing Link, videos that are showing the importance of the Methuselah factor, and I need to make sure that we've got Ronnie enabled to do that. So let's make sure, Ronnie, that we've got you here. Let me just see, make sure that you can show this. Okay. More options. Okay. Okay, Ronnie, why don't you see if that allows you to show the video?
Is there a missing link when it comes to preventing the ravages of COVID-19, when it comes to yourself?
So we're not getting any audio, I think.
I'm Dr. David DeRose, and the research is suggesting that there might be something that's not often in the dialogue that can make a big difference. I'm speaking about the subject of hemorrheology.
Ronnie, why don't you try stopping the screen share? And when you share the screen, there's an option to optimize video and for volume. To share volume, do you see that? So we appreciate all of you. I was going to say marveling at the wonders of technology, but I can see some of you are not all that enthralled. But we're going to try to get this video shown for you. We will send you a link. The best email to use for me is davidderose@hopeawakens.com. davidderose@hopeawakens.com. If I have your email, I can make sure that you get any links and things to the videos. So what we may do, Ronnie, is we may defer showing this tonight. You think that's going to be a better decision? And allow folks to watch on their own time. So that's what we will do. Let me show you a few other things as we wind up this portion of the program. We'll see if we can have things a little bit more streamlined on June 9th for you. But I'm going to go ahead and put my screen back up for you.
When it comes to preventing the ravages of COVID-19, when it comes to yourself and to those you love? I'm Dr. David
head back over
DeRose,
to the slide
and
where
the
we left
research is
off.
suggesting that there might be something that's not often
Okay.
in the dialogue
So
that can make a
basically,
big difference.
what
I'm
you'll be
speaking
able to
about the
do
subject of
if you go to
hemorrheology.
my YouTube
They say,
channel,
no,
it's
I
simply
haven't heard anyone
Compass
talking
Health is
about
one word,
hemorrheology when it comes to
space
COVID-19.
consulting.
Well,
If
some
you
of
go
you
to
may
that
know
YouTube channel,
I wrote
you'll
a book not all
see a
that long ago
section of
called The
videos. We have
Methuselah
like 9
Factor.
of them up right
It
now.
is
They're
making
called The
this
Missing Link. What we're showing is how this Methuselah factor, why it's so important. And that's really your assignment between now and 2 weeks from now. I want you to really, if you look here where we're going to be going through simple health principles to improve your health. But I want you to say, well, this really does make sense. I see why this doctor is saying, okay, why does he want us to improve our blood fluidity? So if you watch some of those videos between now and 2 weeks from today on June 9th, you'll be up to speed why I'm going through simple principles to improve your blood fluidity, because it can help you in all these variety of ways. So Victor has put up this link. If you're on Zoom, if you're not on Zoom, you could take a screenshot. But really, the easiest thing to do, instead of trying to key in all these this code, is just to go to YouTube and put in simply Compass Health Space Consulting and just subscribe to the channel. Then I'll be putting out a couple more videos in that series during the next 2 weeks, so you'll have access to all those videos. And then Victor also handles the resources. So those of you tuning in, you can take advantage of the 50% off if you do want a print copy of the book, but you do not need that. But that's just something we're offering you. Okay? So make sure that you subscribe to the channel. Whether you come to these Tuesday night meetings or not, we're going to be releasing 30 new videos. They're going to come out in a DVD set. Should be coming out in about a month, but you'll be able to see them first. So no one's seen these videos publicly. It's just the creative folks have been working on them. So we're going to be rolling these out starting on June 9. You'll be seeing some of these new videos. We'll have hopefully the kinks worked out so that we can show them for you, and you'll get to watch them. If you're subscribed to the channel, you'll get to see them as well. But we'll have an interactive component in these meetings. Okay. So an added bonus, I promised this to you as we're winding up the health portion. I know we ran about a minute over, but as you can see here, we have a special a book. This is a book I wrote about 4 to 6 years ago, when the Ebola crisis was upon us. And if you want to get a free copy of the book, Evading Ebola, you can just log into compasshealth.net/Ebola, or you can send me an email, davidderose@hopeawakens.com, and we will give you that free book. Okay, I've got some other free resources I'll tell you about in just a minute. So we're going to segue from the health segment now to a spiritual component. Now, don't just leave. Some of you will not want the spiritual component, and that's fine. But I want to tell you about why I've included it in this series. And we're calling it Hope Awakens, based on an inspiring series that some of us have watched recently. And I work with the Hope Awakens team, one of their volunteer coordinators in the Fort Wayne area. But let me tell you, just stay with me for about 10 minutes and check this out, even if you don't think you're interested in the spiritual component. I want to tell you why I've included it. So I've asked you to stay by at least for my overview, because I've got some other free resources you could take advantage of, even if you say, hey, I'd like to come Tuesday nights, because we'll be screening some new videos, and then we'll also have an interactive component where we're going to be talking about maybe some challenges that some folks may want to share some of their health journey. If you don't want to do that, that's fine. But I know some folks have told me they want to connect with other people as they're making changes in their lifestyle. We'll have things that we will not have on my YouTube channel that we're also planning to show, some cooking videos and things, demonstrations that can help you. So one of the reasons we're doing the spiritual component is because what we're finding when it comes to stress, when it comes to immune functioning, when it comes to Methuselah factor, is people today are having real challenges when it comes to optimally controlling their stress. If you don't control your stress well, your immune system won't function as well, a big concern today, and your blood fluidity will be worse. Let me just take a minute and show you just one example of the medical research. So this is kind of interesting, how they induce stress in a laboratory. One of the ways they do it is they show stressful videos. And you may find this, somewhat unsettling, but much of what is watched on conventional internet, television, film is actually stress-inducing. So it may help you forget your problems, but it actually could still be raising your stress hormone levels. Anyway, in this study, that's what they did. They showed a stress-inducing video, and what they found is, guess what? Their blood fluidity got worse. And you say, okay, well, fair enough. This is not all bad. Think about it. If a tiger jumps out from the bushes, fortunately, we don't have tigers in Fort Wayne, Indiana. But if one did jump out of the bushes, I would want my heart rate to go up, my blood pressure to go up, and my blood to be more coagulable. Because if I had wrestled that tiger and he inflicted wounds, I'd want the bleeding to stop as quickly as possible. So this is not some mistake in the human physiology. This is good. You want your blood to be more coagulable when you're in that fight or flight mode. The problem is we trigger the fight or flight mode when we watch the news, when we drive in traffic, when you get a picture, right? So elevated stress hormone levels in the short term and also in the long term worsen blood fluidity. And then chronically elevated stress hormone levels actually impair our immune functioning. So this is a really big concern today. And so the things that we're going to be talking about in the health segment, the first 20 minutes of our time together each Tuesday starting June 9, is going to help with your blood fluidity. But the spiritual component, I'm including it. Why? Because the evidence suggests there's some spiritual connections with stress control. Because when it comes to dealing with stressors, I've noticed over the years, many people tell me that they say the Bible for them is a great stress relieving agency. Now, other people might say it's stress inducing. And you might say, well, okay, who cares if someone says it's stress relieving? Does that really mean that it is? Well, let me show you something, why I've included this. Now, there's a number of reasons. Some of you have engaged with the Hope Awakens meetings. These are meetings that just concluded. Some of you recognize this gentleman, Pastor John Bradshaw. He's an internationally known host of the program It Is Written. And some of you have come to this session because, to be honest with you, I was inspired by these meetings, and other people in Fort Wayne. We said we should do something that continues the influence of these meetings. And what I liked about what Pastor Bradshaw did is he took solid science. He interviewed many health professionals. Some of you, if you watch the series, he even interviewed me one night. And he included Bible principles to try to help people have more hope and deal with stress. And I thought it was very effective. So these Tuesday meetings that we're having, that we're launching tonight with this introductory meeting, were originally designed as a follow-up for the Hope Awakens series. And the idea was that I would, in this spiritual component, build on Pastor Bradshaw's meetings. If you've watched them all, you might say, well, why would I want some physician to go over them again? Because I'm going to not just review what Pastor Bradshaw said, I'll be giving additional content, additional perspective. And as we get into the series, we'll have opportunities for interaction. And you'll see that tonight as we move into that portion. But I've asked you to, all of you to stay by for just a few more minutes. But let me just tell you a few more reasons, tell you about few resources. And if you want to jump off, great. If you say, I just want the health component, I don't want the spiritual dimension, I respect your decision. But just personal way of reference. As a young adult, I was an agnostic. I thought a lot of the spiritual stuff was just frankly kind of a bunch of nonsense, bunch of stories and fables. I felt I was a pretty high stress person at that time in my life. And, I'll tell you, over a course of time, I started looking at some of the very things that Pastor Bradshaw shared and that we'll be looking at. And I said, you know what? I can't just say the Bible is a fairy tale. There's something more here that I've got to look at it. And as I looked at it, I found some compelling things that have been helpful to me in my own life in dealing with stress, having hope, and having a positive outlook. So that's just kind of a personal note on why this is of significance to me. And I'm convinced that regardless of what your spiritual persuasion is, regardless of what your background is, whether you, like I used to consider myself an agnostic or an atheist, or whether you're from another faith tradition, you don't really think the Bible is anything special, maybe an interesting history book. Regardless of what your spiritual persuasion is, I think we're going to find some things that are really encouraging. And you'll see that tonight. And here's what I want to share with you. This is kind of a bridge. This builds on material that Pastor Bradshaw shared. And I'm going to give you a few of these medical points, and we'll tell you the two free additional resources. And then when I go into the actual more spiritual content, those of you say, hey, DeRose, I heard enough. That was a bit for me tonight. I hung in there. And I give you all credit for that. But let me just share with you, the medical science really supports a connection between spirituality and health. Our best-selling book ever that I've been involved with is something called 30 Days to Natural Blood Pressure Control. And we took a section in the science on spirituality and health. One of my co-authors and I, a guy by the name of Dr. Greg Steinke, we came out with a video series based on this. But I'm going to give you about 4 slides from the book and this video that they just looked at how powerful spirituality was. This is a research study. This is published in a neurology journal. looking at what happens when people invest in their spiritual health. And they find that if you do that, you're more likely to stick with other health-promoting behaviors. So just stop for a minute, think about this. The first 20 minutes of each of these presentations, like we did tonight, is focused on physical health. We're going to go through things that can improve your Methuselah factor, your blood fluidity. And I'm looking at the scientific data, and they say, if I help people connect with their spiritual dimension, they're going to have better success in making lifestyle changes. So this is helping you see why, for me as a physician, I wanted to include a spiritual component as well. It's optional, but I want you to kind of see through my eyes as to why I think this is significant. Better physical functioning in people that prioritize spiritual health, improved quality of life, better mental health outcomes, more rapid and complete resolution of grief, fewer hospitalizations. If you end up in the hospital, you're likely to be there a shorter period of time. You'll have less high blood pressure. That's why we included it in our book about high blood pressure. Just compelling data. If you got problems with your blood pressure and you think you're not a spiritual person, what we're saying is, hey, look at the spiritual dimension. It includes things like forgiveness and humility and other things. You don't have to be a member of a church to cultivate your spirituality. Less cardiovascular disease and a longer lifespan. So if you want to dig deeper into the spiritual content and you don't want to hang out with us for it, hopeawakens.com or hopeawakens.org. If you see down there, something got a little bit corrupted in my putting these PowerPoints together, but you want to select previous presentations. And what I'm going to talk with you about tonight is based on the first two presentations, part 1 and part 2 from John Bradshaw's Hope Awakens series. What I'm going to share with you tonight, you'll say, well, this is pretty different, but you'll see how it complements some of the material that Pastor Bradshaw shared. And then on June 9th, I'll continue to build on some of the things that are in these first two presentations. So if you want to go deeper into the spiritual component, go to hopeawakens.com or hopeawakens.org and watch part 1 and part 2. If you've already watched them like I have, you might want to review them over the next couple of weeks, and then we'll come back together and I'll build on his presentation. So that's what we're doing tonight. So this is my concluding slide for those of you who wanted to jump off. I encourage you just to stay by. So these are the final 2 free resources. So I've got a paper that I put together that looks at how the Bible and science go together when it comes to the immune system. And I use a mnemonic called sanctuary. We talk about a biblical concept called a sanctuary, but sanctuary is something, that's used outside of the spiritual realm. We talk about wildlife sanctuaries. It's a place of safety for wildlife, right? Or you talk about sanctuary cities. We could have a political discussion about whether you like or whether you don't like sanctuary cities. But sanctuary is a place of refuge. And compasshealth.net/sanctuary, if you go there, you can get a free resource. It will also automatically put you in our mailing list, so we'll let you know about the resources. So any of you, I see some of you, texting me in real time, and that's great. But if I have your email, I'm going to send out a link to where you can watch the videos, where you can watch this archive video if you haven't been with us from the beginning. And if you know people you want to invite, you want to bring them up to speed in this introductory session, do that. Or you can just email me straight out, davidderose at hopeawakens.com. We're also sending out, if you ask for it, Pastor Bradshaw's book, Promises of Power. A lot of his resources you can get online, but this is one of them that for some of us who worked with the meetings, this was something we have access to share with participants. So send me an email, davidderose at hopeawakens.com, and I can get you that Promises of Power free ebook. Okay, so this is the spiritual portion. We've covered the first 10 or 15 minutes. You hung with me. Those of you that I encourage you to stay by. Now we're going to actually go into the content of the spiritual dimension. And if you just wanted to be here for the health component, great. We'll see you in 2 weeks for the first 20 minutes. We're going to be introducing you to some new videos. They'll be premiered either at that meeting in real time or just right around that time, some new videos that I'm releasing. So join us at 7 p.m. on June 9th. But now let's transition to the spiritual dimension of Hope Awakens. And this is based on part 1 and part 2 of Pastor Bradshaw's program. And we are going to look at some of the material he introduced us to. In his first presentation, he talked about signs. Do you know what they mean? And most of the signs I did pretty well with. You probably did too, if you remember that presentation. But one of them I didn't know about was this, that if you have an exit notice on the right side of a sign, it actually means that the exit is going to be on the right side of the road. You say, oh, okay, well, maybe that's pretty obvious. How about if it's on the other side? What would that indicate? Yes, an exit Notice on the left side of the sign indicates the exit is on the left side of the road. So signs have a meaning, and they cue us as to what's coming. And Pastor Bradshaw's first presentation was on signs. We'll talk about some of those concepts and interact with them a little bit next presentation as well on June 9. But one of his other illustrations I thought was profound. He told that story of an Amtrak engineer. This is not an isolated story. Engineers have done this on more than one occasion. They miss a sign to slow down, and this particular engineer tried to make a 30-degree or 30-mile-per-hour turn at 80. Of course, the results were catastrophic, many injuries and deaths. So here's the question of signs provide reliable evidence of what's before us if the sign is reliable, if it's legitimate, right? So that conductor, that engineer would have been spared terrible tragedy had he heeded the sign. But you could say, well, how do I know the signs or the purported signs or the alleged signs are legitimate? In antiquity, you may know there was this practice where enemies or robbers would put up false signs. Imagine you're walking between cities and a thief changes the sign and directs you to some place where he's waiting to rob you. Not nice. So more to our point, we're speaking about the spiritual dimension and especially about biblical aspects. When the Bible speaks about signs, can we evaluate whether they're true or false? I mean, a lot of people like me, early in my life, I said, just a bunch of storybooks, stories in this book called the Bible. Well, let's look at these questions. How can we know? How can we have some insight? Now, this is really interesting. From my vantage point today, I really see evidence that the Bible is actually trustworthy. Now, I say that with some trepidation, not knowing who's listening, because I think there's all kinds of, I don't want to put any individual in a bad light, but I think there's all kinds of people out there that draw conclusions they say are drawn from the Bible that I would say are anything but biblical. And they make the Bible and they make Christians look pretty ridiculous. And so if you're tuning in tonight and you feel you're an atheist or agnostic, that may be something that's commendable. Now, I know others, if you're, from a Christian worldview, you say, why would I commend an atheist or an agnostic? And the reason I commend some of these people is because some of the stuff they've been told is in the Bible or the Christians believe is really pretty ridiculous. It's not biblical. And if you didn't watch Pastor Bradshaw's meetings, we're going to be looking at a number of these things, the myths that he dispelled in the series that really, I think, need wider circulation. And for me, before I became a Christian, I thought a lot of this stuff was nonsense. I heard about it in churches, okay? And now I realize that this stuff is not sound at all. So we're going to walk through a number of these things. So I want to show you in our time together, especially over these first 2 weeks, the Bible's stories are set in a scientifically defensible framework. We're going to look at that tonight from a physician's perspective. We're going to show you that the scriptural narratives are also set in a historically defensible context. It's not just made up. The Bible there's historical evidence that shows the Bible is actually trustworthy. And the Bible speaks of future events with stunning accuracy. We're going to try to cover all those things in our tonight and then in our presentation 2 weeks from now. So just to full disclosure, tonight we're going to focus on this, the scientific aspect. And this is not really stuff that Pastor Bradshaw dealt with, but I think it's really important because it feeds right into topics that he covered in his first 2 presentations. So we're going to look together now at the first chapter of the book of Daniel. And I would suggest to you from a physician's standpoint, it's really focused on health and wellness. And it's really something important in the midst, I would say, of a toxic culture. Our culture today has become more and more toxic, the kind of rhetoric we hear, the kind of dialogue or lack of dialogue that's taking place. And I want to give you some really practical things tonight. So you may not realize this, but the first chapter of the book of Daniel contains a scientific health study. This was fascinating. Back some years ago, looking at this actual title page from the New England Journal of Medicine, one of the most prestigious medical journals in the world. Back in January of 2003, there was a dialogue going back and forth in the letters to the editor of the New England Journal of Medicine. And the dialogue was about this. What was the first medical study? What was the first clinical study? What evidence is there in history of the first medical study? And these people were writing back and forth. They kind of smallpox studies, studies of scurvy. But here was the kind of final salvo in the dialogue. The earliest clinical trial was neither Watson's study of smallpox nor Lynn's study of the prevention of scurvy. the first report of a clinical trial has biblical origins in the book of Daniel. And then the other author who was in dialogue said, I acknowledge Dr. Lewis's successful search for an earlier clinical trial, one that was performed a couple of thousand years ago and described in the book of Daniel. So tonight, in the time remaining to us, we want to look at Daniel chapter 1. And I do believe that there is a God who wants to guide us as we study the Bible. So let's just have a brief prayer together. Father in heaven, we're looking at the Bible. Some might be joining out of curiosity. Others might be ones who already have a relationship with you. They trust you. Whatever our perspective is tonight, please open our minds as we engage with the scriptures and help us to see the connection with science as well. We ask in your holy name. Amen. So let's look at the account in Daniel chapter 1. It begins this way. In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand with some of the articles of the house of God, and he carried them into the land of Shinar to the house of his God, and he brought the articles into the treasure house of his God. Now, what's really interesting about what's happening here, if you know anything about ancient history, and I'm not going to go through all these slides for the interest of time, but since it's being recorded, if you want to look at the recording and go back and look at some of them. But what's actually happening is Nebuchadnezzar, who was the most powerful potentate on the planet in the days of Daniel, is basically defiling the holy sanctuary of the Hebrew people. He has gone into that temple. He has treated that which is holy as common, and he's taken out these holy articles. And basically what this conveyed in the ancient world was that the God of the Hebrew people, the God of the Bible, we could say, the God of the Old Testament, we might say today, looked impotent, and the God of the Babylonians was superior. That's how the ancients viewed it. Whoever won a battle, their God was superior. And so the temple is defiled, that which is holy is treated as common. From a human perspective, the God of the Bible, irrelevant. Now, by the way, this is the way a lot of people feel today, okay? So it's an interesting story. Well, just watch what plays out. Some of you know this story very well. This is Daniel chapter 1, continuing. The king, King Nebuchadnezzar, has Ashpenaz, his chief official, to select from those Israelite exiles some young men of the royal family, and he actually brings them into a special training program. There were certain qualifications. They had to be handsome, intelligent, well-trained. They had to be quick to learn, have a high aptitude. What was going to happen here is Nebuchadnezzar had an amazing policy. He would take captives who were in the royal line of the countries he had conquered, and he would train them. He would train them to be puppet rulers. So that's what happens in the story. Daniel and 3 of his friends are among that number, and it says the king then gives orders that every day these individuals were to be given the finest food and beverages. They're going to be on this regimen for 3 years. They were going to be fed from the king's table, the same food and wine as the members of the royal court. You'd say, wow, they've arrived, right? Now, verse 6 mentions Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah as 3 Hebrews from the tribe of Judah who were actually among this group that was going to receive the special training. And they were given new names. Very interesting. We don't have a lot of time to dwell on this. But these names, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, if you look at their names, all of them have either L or Yah. You see like A-H or E-L in their name? These names are derived from something to do with God. So Daniel would mean like God is my judge. So referring to the God of the Hebrews. So Nebuchadnezzar gives them all heathen names, names that go along with the Babylonian gods. So their names are changed. It's a part of a brainwashing process. They're going to learn the language of the Babylonians. They're being given the food of the Babylonians. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. So everything humanly speaking, by the way, Daniel has been marched some 500 miles from Jerusalem to Babylon, okay? And it says Daniel resolves that he's not going to defile himself with the royal rations of food and wine. Now, it's really interesting. So Daniel is basically saying that even though his senses would tell him that God is irrelevant and the things that are holy to God are not significant, the God of the Bible, he's still saying, even though it doesn't look that way, I am going to still trust the God of heaven, the God who revealed himself in the scriptures. And according to the scriptures, there were certain things that you shouldn't eat or drink. And he says, I'm not going to defile myself. So he asks Ashpenaz to allow him to follow his dietary convictions. Now, Ashpenaz is sympathetic to Daniel, but he's afraid because the king is offering Daniel and his friends the best food. That's what they think. So the best science of the day was saying, eat these foods. And Daniel says, the king's decided what you're supposed to eat. If you don't look as fit as the other young men, he may kill me. I mean, this is how capricious those rulers were in antiquity. You know, if they think I'm messing up with the educational program for you guys, they're going to kill me. Now, by the way, if it was a life or death matter with the king, do you think only Ashpenaz would have been killed? I mean, Daniel was literally putting his life on the line to follow healthy lifestyle practices. It's an amazing story. And why was he so particular? No doubt there were other Hebrew captives. And what do you think they said? Was Daniel bent on becoming a martyr? Well, I don't think that's likely. Even though the human evidence suggested otherwise, he was saying he was going to trust this God who at a time in my life I didn't trust. He was going to trust a Bible that I didn't trust. He had a portion of the scriptures available. Of course, some of it wasn't written because Daniel actually wrote one of the books of the Bible. So Daniel used temple language. He said, my body is a temple. He said, I'm not going to defile myself. And I would suggest to you, this is a powerful principle. If you realize that your body is holy, this will help you in your lifestyle journey. So I'm telling you as a physician, if you connect with this spiritual principle, and by the way, it's not just an Old Testament principle. The Apostle Paul talked about it here in 1 Corinthians. He said, what? Your body is what? The temple of the Holy Spirit. And if you catch this vision, it will make a big difference for you. Daniel caught this vision. He asked for a 10-day trial, And that's what happens. You read the book of Daniel. Ashpenaz gives him 10 days, and Daniel only gets vegetables to eat and water to drink. Now, when I started practicing medicine, some of you, by looking at me, can tell that I didn't graduate just last year. I've been doing this for a long time. But when I first graduated from medical school, I had a vision for this healthy lifestyle. I was putting patients in the hospital on diets that were based on plant foods. The dietitians were worried, just like Ashpenaz was. You know, you're not going to give people enough meat and cheese. What's going to happen? Actually, all the patients did well. We actually realized today that this is the best diet. And this is what happened in Daniel 1. The ones who didn't drink the wine and didn't eat the rich foods of Babylon, they actually emerged superior from a 10-day trial. And I know some people read this, they say, come on, what can happen in 10 days? I can tell you from the medical research, 10 days is enough to make a difference. And I've worked with these programs over the years. I've not worked at Pritikin Center, but Pritikin is one of the famous lifestyle programs. They run a 10-day program, and they've published remarkable results. One of the programs I worked with is called WEMAR. WEMAR is based in Northern California. They're a New Start program. You can see some images from the program there. You can go to newstart.com if you want to check it out. My wife is still a physician who helps out in that clinic. She lives with me here in Fort Wayne, but she's actually back on WEMAR's campus right now seeing patients. I don't work with them at all at this point, but they've demonstrated powerful things. This is from another residential health center I worked at. And I'm not going to go into this in detail, but this is data that was 2 weeks apart, 14 days apart. But when we change people's lifestyles, get them on a healthy diet, exercise, stress management, all of that, presumably things that Daniel was likely doing. He's controlling the stress by being faithful to God. He's drinking water. He's eating plant-based foods. And you can see dramatic drops in things like triglycerides and cholesterol. So look at this. The average person dropped their triglycerides from around 220 down to around, 170. So that's a 44-point drop on average. And you can see other changes. Average person lost about 4% of their body weight in just over 2 weeks. Many of them were overweight, and that's why they came to the program. This data has been published in places. This is data from WEMAR. They published in one of the diabetes journals. And I could share with you other data, other research I've done on diabetic nerve problems. But in short programs, 10 days to 2 weeks to 19 days, reversal or dramatic improvement in diabetic nerve problems. This was something we published at a national conference showing 20 to 45% improvement in diabetic nerve pain and nerve symptoms by a healthy lifestyle over the course of 19 days in this study. Okay, so you say, what does all this have to do with what we're talking about? It has to do with this point. and that is the Bible stories are set in a scientifically defensible framework. That's the book of Daniel. And John Bradshaw, in his second presentation that we'll talk about in our program June 9th, he actually looks at Daniel chapter 2 in some detail. We'll look at that. But the stories are set in a scientifically defensible framework. Just stop and think about this. And we're going to step away from the slides at this point. We're going to allow you, we want this to be somewhat interactive. I know some of the logistics took a little bit longer, but I'm kind of interested in your feedback on this, because over the years, people have said, this science, does this really correlate with the Bible? Think about this. Daniel was written purportedly in 600 BC. We're going to look at that question next time we're together, June 9th, to see if it's really true, if there's evidence, historical evidence, that Daniel was written, the book of Daniel, written when it said it was written. And it's really important to what Pastor Bradshaw covered on his second presentation. But we'll look at that. But I'm just kind of curious. What do you think? Do you think there were any cultures in 600 BC that valued a vegetarian diet? Any thoughts about that? If you want to participate, you can raise your hand, or there's a way to raise a hand or wave or something. Victor's trying to help keep an eye out too, so we can get a word in. Anyone have any response to that? Do you know of any cultures that were prioritizing a plant-based diet? Looks like you're all speechless. And it's the appropriate response. Okay, I see someone here raising a hand. Go ahead. He's identified as John Treat. John, you have some insight into this? Your speaker should be good. Am I just not hearing you? Are you guys all hearing that video and there's just some problem with me? Are you hearing John? So John, we are not hearing you, but it looks like you're not muted. Okay. So, someone asked about Hindu people. And that, I think that is a good, and some of the Buddhist traditions, okay? Someone's mentioning Chinese, Buddhism, Hinduism. Yeah, there are traditions that did value that. Middle Eastern traditions, I'm not aware of any. Egyptian, Babylonian. In fact, just interesting side note, the Cambridge Encyclopedia of Food says that the use of pork has a long history of use that goes back to Babylonian times. And that is curious, because that's of special significance in history. Well, we do want to wind up at 8 o'clock. That's our promised, our stated goal. If those of you joined us late, I want to remind you about something. I will show you a slide one more time. I'll share it with you, because we have some free resources that we want you to take advantage of if you're interested in them. We had three free resources that we mentioned tonight, and I'm going to try to put that up on the screen for you here as I'm navigating through my slides. One of them is the free book called Evading Ebola, and Evading Ebola is available by simply sending me an email to David DeRose, at hopeawakens.com. You can see that there. Or you can go to compasshealth.net/Ebola. And then you can see we have a couple of other free resources that are available for you. One is this handout on the immune system. And you can get that free by going to compasshealth.net/sanctuary. It's about 14 or 15 pages. I've gone through some of the latest information on the immune system and how there are Bible principles that are designed to enhance the immune system. And then we've also got David DeRose at hopeawakens.com. You can request it. The Promises of Power book by Pastor John Bradshaw. It's a little booklet, got a lot of nice points that can kind of encourage you. So those are some of the free resources that we've had for you tonight. Next week, the plan is that we'll try to allow for a little bit more interaction. If I have your email or you're subscribed to my YouTube channel, we will allow you to keep abreast of everything that's developing. So my YouTube channel is Compass Health, one word, Compass Health, even though it's two words, it's just one, space consulting, Compass Health space consulting. Okay, so we're going to wind up, we're going to formally end our program tonight. with a word of prayer. We will dismiss you. If some of you want to stay by and you have some questions or you had some technical problems, we can help you with that. But we do want to limit the meeting to a 1-hour meeting each night. We will not have a meeting a week from tonight on June 2, but on June 9, we will start sharing some of my new videos that deal with the Methuselah factor. If you came late, I'll have some closing words after our prayer that will bring you up to speed. Let's pray together. Father in heaven, thank you that we've been able to go on this journey together. We pray if you want our ranks to increase, that you'd bring additional folks to join us June 9. If this is something that you want to have make a bigger difference in our lives, just continue to guide us and help us so that we can make healthy lifestyle changes and also learn practical things that will help us to increase our hope and our stress management. We ask it all in the name of our loving Creator. Amen. Okay, so we're officially concluding the meeting, but I'm going to stay by. I know a number of you joined late, and I wanted to share with you just how you can be up to speed for the meeting on June 9th. So on June 9th, we'll be interacting with content that is on my YouTube channel. So hopefully you'll have watched some of the YouTube videos called The Missing Lake. They average about 5 to 7 minutes long, and we talk about how improving your blood fluidity can help you be healthier. And you want to just be convinced of that. If you say, I'm already convinced, you told me enough in the 10 or 15 minutes tonight, I'm on board, great. You don't need to watch the videos. But those videos will help you understand why we're going through some specific practical suggestions each week that can help you improve your blood fluidity. So I want to remind you about that. And if you look on the chat, if you have access to the chat, you can see the link there early on in the chat section. If you say, hey, I didn't get that link, I can't get the chat, I'm watching on YouTube or I'm watching on Facebook, then what you can do is simply send me an email. Send an email to davidderose@hopeawakens.com. And basically what I'll do is I'll make sure you get that link, or just go to my YouTube channel, which is Compass Health Space Consulting. The other thing that can help you come up to speed, you say, I liked some of the biblical concepts, but it sounded like there was a lot more. There is, and Pastor Bradshaw's meetings were excellent if you didn't watch them. hopeawakens.com will take you to his archives. And next week we'll engage with things that he talked about in his first 2 presentations. So you don't have to watch anything, just come back June 9th. But if you say, I want some more of the background material, I want to be more up to speed on some of these things, you can watch that over the next couple weeks. So that's what I wanted to tell you by way of background. So if you jumped on late, I should have brought you all up to speed. What I'll do now is take any questions or comments that anyone might have, anything that anyone wants to share at this point.
Hey, David, this is
Yes.
Bob DeMoss.
Oh, wow, Bob DeMoss. So good to see you. Been a long time.
You were my doctor about 25, 30 years ago.
You're exactly right. You got a good memory.
And you were so good that I don't have any health issues ever since I met you.
Oh, wow. Well, that's quite a commendation. Good. We'll have to use you as a referral in the future, Bob.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing that. So who's the young lady next to you?
My bride. My wife went to heaven 4 years ago, and Kristen was a friend of the family for a number of years. So the Lord brought us together. We have been married for 4 years, and we taught a class on health in our church the last 6 weeks. So
wonderful.
We're following
congratulations.
the road.
Tremendous. Well, glad. And it's Kristen, you said?
Yeah.
Kristen.
Nice
okay. It's a privilege. And Bob, make sure you send me an email so I have your correct email. Do you get my updates and things?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Good.
You remember we were on the radio together one time when the other doctor didn't show up.
Yeah, I still do a weekly radio show. So it's actually the radio show I do now. It's a weekly show. It's themed for Native Americans. So it's called American Indian Living. And you can search that, and we still come out with a new episode every week. Although in the summer, we, like many shows, we air that we used to call them reruns. Now they're called encore shows. So we actually we start our encores up in this actually beginning of June. Well, thanks for saying hello, Bob. I'm glad to meet you, Kristen.
Thank you.
Glad to be with you.
You too. Thank you. Any other folks who want to share anything or? It was good to see each one of you, by the way. So if there is no one else who wants to interact, if some of you are wanting to interact and trying to unmute yourself and having trouble, just use one of those signals on Zoom. Whether if you can't find that raised hand, there's a clapping signal and there's a thumbs up signal. But I'll assume the rest of you just wanted to hang in for a little bit and catch some of the last dialogue. So listen, I was very glad to see each one of you. Thank you, each one, for coming out. And I'm available personally, too. And some have said they would like something less formal and more personal. We'll talk about that on June 9th. If you say, I just wanted something where I could talk with people. And Dr. DeRose, you did all the talking. So I'm sensitive to that concern as well, too. So we'll have some other options for you, too, that we'll be rolling out as the series gets started in earnest on June 9th. Well, thank you all for coming out this evening. We're going to wind up on that note. So goodbye to each of you. June 9th. We'll look forward to seeing many of you back again.